Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and welcome to the Martini. My name is Gus, and I'm Aerie Rental's Director of Business Development for North America. And I've been with the Aerie family for over 17 years now, and honored to be your host today. At Aerie Rental, our goal is to equip you, the filmmakers, with the most inspiring image technology in the world. Our services cross borders and continents with a network of facilities in North America, Europe, and the UK, bringing you first-class camera, lighting, and grip equipment wherever you may be. Our team is there to welcome you with friendly expertise, personalized solutions, and we value the relationships we built on trust. As a friendly reminder, please send us your questions via the Q&A tab today, and we'll get to as many of those as possible during the course of the show. Okay, with us today, we have the incredibly kind and always stylish producer, Jamie Buckner. Jamie is a physical production veteran, director, writer, and founder of the independent content collective, Derby City Productions. After working on everything from smaller independent projects to larger studio fare in and around his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, he moved to New York City in 2004, where he worked his way up the ranks on features such as War of the Worlds, The Departed, August Rush, Julie and Julia, Men in Black 3, and John Wick 2, just to name a few. His feature debut as director and writer was Split, the world's first romantic bowling comedy, which is available on various streaming outlets now, so check it out. Jamie's most recent projects as a producer include Rust Creek, Billions, The Night of, The Morning Show, and the upcoming Catch the Fair One and The Vigil. Looking forward to seeing both of those. Welcome, Jamie. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Always good. You said fantastic when we were talking before, and now you go in with always stylish, and I'm just like,
always.
What in the world am I supposed to do with any of that? No, it's a pleasure to be here, man. I'm sorry. I hopefully I'm even close to as informative as the other episodes that I've seen have been.
Oh, it's great. No, it's we're here to share stories, experiences, and we're living in a world now that is just really interesting for all of us. We've got a lot of things going on, yeah. And a lot of important things we need to keep talking about, yeah. And a lot of challenges that are going to be coming our way. And I think that's why I like to meet with a lot of different people and not just be talking to cinematographers, but also talking to other filmmakers, directors, and producers, because all of our experiences, we collide and we come together and we make something special, and then we go off, and sometimes we're doing it again together, or we're off in another part of the country or world. So, right. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got started in this industry, and what drove you to join this crazy circus.
Well, sure, man. I mean, it's so funny. I have so many different. I have the super abbreviated version, and I could talk your ear off forever. The long story made very short is effectively I grew up. I wanted to draw comic books for a living. Where it goes back to from the very beginning, and that's where I fell in love with storytelling. Was comics and graphics and things like that. Went through high school. I played sports. All coming up through like middle grade school, high school. And then got to college, and I was like, okay, I'll be an art major. And then that didn't really settle with me too well. And then I switched to music, and that was really interesting. But I also was like, well, I don't want to be a musician. And actually I was dating a girl at the time who I'd never considered the fact that I liked movies, but she really was like a cinephile, was into movies. And I was like, oh, is that a thing? You can just I thought movies were just something that everybody kind of enjoyed. And then I was sort of open to the idea of no, you can be a student of them, and there are people who make them and pour all of this, meaning and these beautiful things, into them. And I'd been a reader, so I knew that about the world of literature. And then it basically somewhere around 17, 18, 19, I got into drama and started working on the school plays, and I was in a couple of them. I'm sure there's footage of that terribly embarrassing stuff around somewhere.
We might have something to show you later.
Oh my God, you better not. Oh my God. So I effectively just kind of messed around until I eventually ended up transferring schools and up to Northern Kentucky, where I ended up graduating from. And somewhere along in there, I figured out all of these things that I couldn't decide on all sort of came together in this one area. It's drawing, music, architecture, writing, everything, you know, photography, all of these things that I really had sort of dabbled in and couldn't decide on. I was like, oh, well, they're all right here in this thing that I love already anyway. And took a few classes in college and, you know, wrote a script and kind of fell in love with that, you know, process. Wrote my first feature that I ended up, you know, couldn't get out of my head and ended up making however many years later. And moved to New York. I was going to move to Los Angeles, but I fell in love with a playwright who, you know, was like, okay, well, great. We can keep dating and you can go to LA and I'll go to New York and I'll see you later. And I was like, all right, I'll check out New York. Like, fine. You know, like she totally called my bluff. And I basically got off the plane in New York and was like, fell in love and haven't left since. So, you know, I'd worked on a couple little things. Elizabethtown, the Cameron Crowe movie, came to Louisville, and I was one of the few people who had any sort of resume in town at that time. So I got an office PA job on that, and then moved to New York. And then the first job I got as an actual New Yorker, rent-paying New Yorker, was also back in Kentucky on a little horse racing movie called Dreamer. So, because of course, I feel like that's how these things go. And then I sent my resume out when I got back, via facsimile to probably 100 places, not to date myself, but I'm old. And you know, somebody in a production office saw a name of a friend of theirs that they knew, and they called me up and said, can you start tomorrow? And I said, sure. And I basically haven't really stopped working ever since. You know, they said, can you drive in Manhattan? And I said, absolutely, yes. And then I didn't sleep all night because I was terrified and didn't want to drive in Manhattan, and now I love it. Anyway, so people on that movie, which was a Honeymooners remake with like John Leguizamo and Cedric the Entertainer, we were in the same building as War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds was looking for, you know, some PAs. They said, hey, this kid's new, but he's not an idiot. And they're like, okay, great, come on over. And so then I get to work on a Spielberg movie as my, like, one of my first things ever. And so that was incredible. And then the new Scorsese movie calls the Spielberg movie. It says, hey, do you have any kids who aren't idiots? We're starting up something. And they said, yeah, this guy's all right. And then I go over there and I work with, you know, these people who ended up becoming really good friends of mine and mentors on the Departed team. And then we roll into August Rush, and then that rolls into the next thing and the next thing. It's just kind of, that's been the progressive snowball of things. And all the while also knowing that process was terrific and I love it. And I loved coming up through the production office ranks, and I love, you know, being a part of physical production all the same now. It's, you know, that's my day job. I always tell people I have the world's best fallback plan. Like, if I'm not writing and directing and creative producing my own stuff, I'm still messing around and working on these amazing projects with people. So, you know, all the while though, as I'm coming up, always focusing on like what's, you know, when it was split for such a long time. It was this little silly bowling movie I had to get out of my system. But always knowing that I was working on things that I was going to write or I was going to work with other friends on and try and produce and get out into the world on my own. Because there's this weird divide that there doesn't need to be, but sort of between physical production and the creative side of things that I think doesn't have to be as separate as it tends to be. And so I've all this time, all these, however many years since like 02, these 17, 18 years, I always am sort of keeping it front of mind what stories I really want to be telling and what passion projects are really out there. And I just, over recent years, have been able to really focus on those things a little bit more, which has been great.
Mm. And so you spoke about mentors, you spoke about partners and people that really helped you. You know, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Who and what films did you end up working together on?
Oh, well, I mean, boy, I can start dropping names for sure. I mean, really where it started, I mean, I met my good friend Phil Ramos, I met on War of the Worlds, and we've been good friends since then and sort of like come up side by side. And then over on The Departed, I met my friend Mark Hagerman and Patty Willett. And, you know, that's where ultimately I met my friend John Edmondson and, you know, Cindy Hunn, who's out in LA now, Carol Cuddy, Mac Brown, G. Mac Brown, all these great, amazing people. Like The Departed, not only is it amazing to like work on a movie with that caliber of team and filmmaker that actually ends up winning Best Picture. I got so many calls that night, like congratulating me. I was like, guys, I was a PA. Like, don't congratulate me. But that was really a formative experience working on that movie, because then, yeah, like I said, then we all did August Rush and sat in the same office. And I ended up working with Mac on Billions however many years later. And, Carol and I have stayed in touch, and she's made some great connections for me over the years also. And it's one of those things where it's sort of, that is probably the most specific early group, and I'm probably missing some people, and I would feel terrible as soon as I, click end meeting on this thing. But, and then jump forward to a few years later, and I end up working with Mark actually on this movie called The Other Guys, and someone who's doesn't even work on the whole show, but like I meet because she started setting up the second unit, I think it was, but Holly Ryman. And then we stay in touch. And then, me and Holly worked together for however many years right in a row. We worked on Premium Rush together, and then we go and we work on, we do Wick together, we do The Night Of, and, and so that's another, Holly, as far as like the next step in my career, like I owe so much to her for really kind of keeping me employed and not getting annoyed with me over those years. And all of these people also, meanwhile, as I've been taking these next steps, have been so incredibly kind with like introductions and help and, answering questions and all of the different things along the way.
Mm. And on your credits, you have a lot of second unit, action unit type coordinating stuff, which is just wild because that's.
I got into that niche for a little while. That was the me and Holly, I think, specifically thing, because Men in Black 3, we were like, it was like sequels and blowing stuff up was sort of just like our jam for a little bit, which I can't. I've already sort of decided, I got my bowling rom-com out of my system, and now I got this Western that I just wrote that I'm trying to hit the ground with and see if we can make up here in the Catskills actually, as far as like my projects. But then I'm like, I already know for the third one, like I miss action movies. I miss blowing stuff up. So like, I'm like my next movie, it's going to be some sort of like action kind of, I don't know, like a backwoods action kind of like Dukes of Hazzard heist movie or something. But yeah, no, I probably know every stunt guy up and down the East Coast and half of LA.
Well, there's a rumor going around that the Western is going to make a huge comeback now.
Yeah. Couple folks in a horse in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, social distancing for the win on that one for sure. Yeah. No, it's, oh man, I grew up, my dad is probably at home right now watching another episode of Bonanza that he's seen 100 times, or Gunsmoke, or The Searchers for the 400th time, or Outlaw Josie Wales. Like, yeah, if there's one thing that's more ingrained in my system than bowling from my parents, then it's Westerns.
Well, I won't get too down the rabbit hole with that, but I'm in the same boat, and my kids want to kill me every Friday night when I come upstairs with a Sergio Leone film or a John Ford film. They're like, no, not another one.
I heard some crazy thing, and we can talk about this later. I heard some crazy thing that John Ford like worked for the CIA for a while, like was some sort of like sleeper cell agent, something. Anyway, whatever. We can talk about that offline, but it's wild. Google like John Ford CIA. There's all kinds of wild stuff out there.
Wow. All right. Well, actually not a bad segue. I'd like to just talk about, so you've dug into the history of really being into art, writing, all this stuff. So for you, I'd like to hear kind of like your top maybe 5 of where you're like, from my perspective now in my career, these are the films that just the music, the writing, all of this stuff just comes together, and it's stuff that I can watch any point in time, and I always reference or I look at. I'm just curious.
Interesting.
Off the top of your head.
Oh man, you're so cruel. You're mean for not emailing me about this beforehand or something. And this is not stuff I worked on. This is just me personally, watching things.
Yeah, I just like to see where it's at.
I mean, the easy answer, and I always say that it's an unanswerable question, right? It's like picking a favorite kid, and I don't even have kids, and I know that's an unanswerable question. The Big Lebowski is like, if I'm forced to say something, The Big Lebowski is my favorite movie, and I will watch it. I will quote it. I could start now and just not finish until the last line. Like I know every little turn of phrase. I have friends back in Kentucky who started the Lebowski Fest. I've been to that several times. It's borderline embarrassment, because like I ended up working with the Coens for a little bit and had to like totally keep my chill the whole time. So that one for sure. Again, it was a huge huge, I've been so fortunate to work just nearby so many of these greats. Nora Ephron, you know, When Harry Met Sally specifically is genuinely one of my favorite movies of all time. Like me and my wife, like we'll just put it in anytime. It's another one that we probably know by heart. It's my favorite of the rom-com genre, I think. So there's that one. For better or worse, I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. Clerks is what got me into like the idea that I could make movies. I effectively saw that for the first time, and I'd already seen Mallrats 100 times, but then I watched Clerks and was like, oh, I can do that. And then if you go watch my movie, I'd basically rip him off half the time. So, oh my God, that's 3. And then, God, I'd be pretty hard pressed. I mean, there are so many that I could like. I mean, Jaws is an easy answer. Like Jaws is just like such an incredible movie.
Well, how about this? How about if if you were in a position where you were like, I have to produce a remake of a film. Is there one out there where you say, I think this is timely, or this would be better, or we could do a better job of this because there's something good about it, but it wasn't all the way. It didn't
all the way hit home. Oh, there's so many weird little movies like that though. Like I don't know, man. This is a terrible example, but one of my favorite movies of all time, I've probably seen it more than just about anything else. I don't know if you guys, the old Tupac movie, Juice. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I just think that's one of those that I just like, it's such a, like, I think I name drop it in Split, but it's one of those that I'm just like, there's a great Lorenz Tate movie called The Inkwell also. And then like, so I think about stuff like that, but then I go back, but they're so good in and of themselves. But then I think of, I don't know, man. What was I just thinking this the other day? Gleaming the Cube. I think I was talking to somebody the other day. They should remake Gleaming the Cube. Like do like an update with like Christian Slater now, like a la Mr. Robot, like trying to get on a skateboard. I don't know, man. There's a bunch, and it's hard kind of on the spot like this, but
okay.
I also like I've been watching the Before trilogy, sort of just like in my time here, just because it kind of speaks to this Western that I wrote. But those movies are so incredible too, and I'm just like, we haven't seen anything like that for a while. Not that anybody could touch the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Midnight kind of world, but like I'd be curious to see that, and maybe it's been done and I missed it, but to see it from a different perspective, not you know what I mean, like a different community, a different group of people. And I'm sure there's probably articles written on how people have taken that formula and done it, and these are just things that are fresh with mind, you know.
Yeah. So out of the stuff you've worked on, you know, which of the projects did you find just the most logistically challenging, and wonder what was so challenging about those?
Of what I've done, if you go back and you get into if you even get into the things where I was just kind of part of the office, but were the most rewarding because of the different challenges and how sort of complex they were. Like there's a Charlie Kaufman movie I worked on with some of those great people I mentioned earlier called Synecdoche, New York, which is was that the first movie he directed? I think it was. But we were in the middle of a warehouse, and it was the middle of the summertime, and it was super hot, and it was VFX, and it was a movie within a movie, within a play, with different people playing different people through different planes of existence, and like what's a dream and what isn't, and who's how old now, and who's dating who, and like which of these actors that are playing one another or that are meant to sort of look almost exactly like one another. Like it was such a, and excuse my language, and bleep if you need to, whatever, but it's such a mind fuck of a movie. It's the only script that I ever got when I went to work on a project. I read it once and was like, okay, I don't even know if I like that. I don't know what just happened. And I went through and I read it again, and I highlighted stuff that I knew I needed to look up as far as like connectivity to things or just references I didn't get or whatever. And I did that. I looked everything up, and I went back and I read it a third time with all that knowledge. And then it hit me, and it's like, I think we're going to make something genuinely incredible here. And it's one of the few things that I've worked on that when I tell people, not a ton of people have seen it, I don't guess, which is a shame. But when I do tell people that I worked on that, it's one of the ones that immediately, like, if they know it and they're like movie people, they're just like, oh, you worked on that? Oh my God. And like a million questions, and like, it's incredible, but it was tricky because it was a lot of, you know, Philip Seymour Hoffman's a magician. He's incredible, but like the rehearsal process and like getting in, dealing with these locations and all of the moving parts. It was a very ambitious thing. And it was, I look back on it now, and it was, and that was with the great Erica Kay too. Erica, I should name drop because she's just one of the best in the city as well, in the world. It was a lot going on. It was very tricky at the time. But then looking back on it, I wouldn't trade out anything for the world. It was an incredible experience, and it's a terrific movie.
That's cool. Yeah. It's so very curious to talk about, because I want to get to some of the questions that are coming in too now, but wanted to dig into some of your projects because you shared some behind the scenes stuff with us too. Mm-hmm. And I mean, most recently you've been getting more and more involved as an actual line producer, co-producer, and going to that level. And, you know, I'd like to hear kind of, you know, what the challenges were jumping from being a PA to an office PA, so on and so forth. And, you know, I would imagine there's politics involved. And imagine, you know, obviously, it's relationships you got to build. Like to yeah. But I would like to, you know, talk about some of those challenges as well as we go through and look at some of these images, because that's a side that, you know, a lot of us don't see. But obviously, as the producer, you're ultimately responsible for making sure all the pieces connect, right? And getting it all there and in time for the crew to start shooting that day. So, and like you said, dealing with all these different, I mean, I think you work in one of the most difficult cities in the world to shoot in. It's extremely, extremely logistically challenging and very expensive. And to take on an ambitious project like Charlie Kaufman's project and make that for, I would imagine it was not a very big budget, and to achieve that is something that's an amazing talent and a gift. So let's pull up some of these images, and I'd like to just have you kind of give us a narration of, you know, what was going on that day and all the fun behind the scenes.
Sure.
Some of those.
Sure.
And then I think, let's see, what was the first one we had here? I think we had some images from, was it To Catch the Fair One? Was that the first one that you sent us?
It's Catch the Fair One, potentially. I kind of put them all in the same little Dropbox folder. So whatever, I can chat about whatever comes up. Or I can chat about anything and everything. I should say, now I feel like I've already dropped a couple names. I feel like I should just be like, Ray Angelic was on Synecdoche too, and Anthony Bregman, who's great. You know, like my friend Gary Martin I met on, you know, I worked with on that. And my friend Dave worked with the Coens. Yeah, like whatever. I just name drop all day long. I'm just going to feel guilty when I get done. Oh yeah. Yes.
We're trying to figure out what this picture.
So what I have to say about this is basically, this is a shout out to art departments, I think, really more than anything else. This is a shot of what a basement that we needed to shoot and when Catch the Fair One comes out, if anyone wants to mentally mark this, there is a basement scene that is very pivotal in that movie. A basement that plays very prominently in that movie in general. And that basement that we love is behind all of this stuff. So all of this had to, in a very short amount of time with very little money, had to get pulled out of here. Everything had to get dressed and look terrific. And it does, and it looks incredible. And it all had to be made safe. That was, you know, as a person in my position, you know, anyone's position really, and especially as a supervisor of anything, really should be safety. So I just kind of was like, why do we have to shoot here? What's going on? And, you know, like asked all the right questions, did all the right things, and safety will come up again in another picture that I shared. But it's just incredible to me. It's just like, it's such an interesting, it's one of the many things about this industry that I love is it's sort of just like, people think it's all glitz and glamour. I love like calling my folks on a day like this and they're like, hey, how's it going? What's going on up in Buffalo? And I'm like, well, I'm digging through a basement full of stuff, possibly some sort of hoarder situation. You know what? It's great. Everything's great. There's movie stars, everything's fine. But it's like, it's so frequently just problem solving, and like the amount of times I'm like talking about porta potties or like digging through dumpsters or like dealing with like spreading hay on someone's lawn that we destroyed, you know, like whatever. It's just, that's why I shared this one. I just think it's, you know, the glitz and glamour of the film industry, which then I guess we can talk about this one too, this wonderful Super 8 or whatever it was that we ended up shooting up in Buffalo. And of course we're there. It's like a 6 p.m. call. We're there till 6 in the morning. It's my friend Jake, the first AD there. But that's another thing. And it just, this sort of leads me into like, what's so interesting, I think, about jumping from project to project. And anybody in the industry could say this. Like, I feel like I learned something new about a new pocket of the world or a new skill or a new corner of life with every movie, which I think is fascinating. You know, the sort of like the like carny aspect of it all, where it's always a different experience with a different group of people, you know, to sometimes lesser degree than others. You know, a lot of it's not a huge industry, so you end up working with a lot of the same great folks, but the sort of the nomadic nature of it. And then like, what, again, this is just outside of Buffalo. This was just a beautiful, beautiful day, this crazy road that goes almost dirt straight up that we're getting this wide shot of with these wonderful windmills in the background. That's Joe, our director, and Jake again. And it's, you know, it's just, it's fascinating to me, these beautiful situations you find yourself in, and sometimes even these sort of junker basement situations, that there's a beauty in there as well, you know? So it's, I don't know. These are all the reasons I'm like stuck and couldn't do anything else for a living, is all this stuff that I find fascinating. More from Couch to Fair One, same house. Definitely had chickens that we had to deal with. Those are not for the movie. They just live there. So this, again, glitz and glamour is the theme that we're going on with this particular movie.
So I grew up just south of Buffalo, and I think it was my great grandfather used to say, you know, we got 2 seasons up here, July 4th and winter. So I know that can be pretty tough up there. So
it was so cold. It got so cold. Like, in hindsight, it's very funny when I tell people, it's like, yeah, we made a movie in Buffalo in November, December. Like, oh, really? Like, oh yeah, I guess that does sound a little, why would you do that? But it was great. It's going to be a great movie. I'm excited.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And then I think it was it last year or the year before at Toronto with the Vigil? It was last year, right?
It would have been 2019, I believe. Yeah.
That movie still haunts me to this day. It doesn't help that it was a midnight showing, and
I can't wait for everybody to see it. It was such an interesting process. Like, it was so incredible. It was just an incredible movie. I mean, I was going to work on a horror movie. I had not worked on a horror movie prior to that. And I got this script from a friend of a friend, and it was just like, yeah, look, it's my chance at a horror movie. And, you know, the producers were all Jewish. We had to have, you know, it's a Hasidic horror movie, really, or, you know, the Jewish horror movie. And almost everyone involved was Jewish. And I was like, guys, I'm a lapsed Catholic. I don't know, like, you got the wrong guy. Like, I'll come help you out. But it was a fascinating process. It's the only movie I've ever had to get kosher catering and craft service for across the board. So that was an interesting new puzzle to solve. And in this picture, this is very funny. All of these pictures are like, there's Dave, and Menashe is wonderful. He's just like, if you haven't seen the movie Menashe itself, you should totally go watch it. But he plays a smaller part in our movie, but he's got his own that's terrific. Nice little fake dead body there. I had to figure out how to, like, on a indie budget, how to do a creepy special effects thing with that took the better part of an entire day of shooting. The picture right before this, though, we were talking about a little bit in prep for this. Like, it's fascinating to me with the COVID of it all. Like, these are the kind of things that are not going to happen anymore. Mark, can you go back one picture? Yeah, there's his buddy Zach Cooperstein there, who's one of the great, you know, younger indie DPs around. I think you guys are having him on sooner than later.
Yeah, we're fortunate he's going to join us in a couple of weeks. It's great.
And so he's a great guy. I feel bad I have a picture of him looking at his phone, I think is what's happening in this, but I'm sure it's something very work related.
Exactly.
Yeah. But like, I just love it. There's like, what, 7 people in this picture? 1, 2, 3. Like, these are situations that we're not going to have again for quite some time. Like, with the social distancing of it all. Like, it seems so irresponsible right now, but it's like, I've been in situations even tighter than that. And yes, there is some sort of tape or something on the lens. I don't know. Zach is his mind is incredible. I think we shot through a casserole dish at some point on that movie as well.
Very cool.
I'm sure he can enlighten you on that. And this is one of the longer dolly runs that I've ever had on a production, which makes for a terrific shot. But I was just kind of like, wait, what? How much track do we need? Why do we? This is also the night that like the NYPD was not in love with us, but you know, we made it through. It's totally fine. Yeah. And then this was just a cool stage day. You know, it's especially on these smaller indie ones. It's good to get any sort of real stage time, but this was such a trippy sequence towards the end of the movie and turned out really, really great. I just thought this was a cool shot. We were out at, this was, oh wait, is this Eastern Effects? It's Eastern Effects, a little further out east in Brooklyn. But yeah, man, the Vigil's great. The Vigil's terrific. It turned out even better than I knew it was going to be good because Keith had written a terrific script. He'd done so much prep already for it. Zach's incredible. You know, the producers, Rafi and JD, my friend Adam. You know, every tip to tail, there's so many great people. Dave puts in an incredible performance. He's become a friend too. You know, we all hung out in Toronto and got to celebrate it there. Blumhouse picked it up for domestic. So yeah, it'll be out soon. I was actually just talking to one of the producers the other day, and it's just a matter of like kind of figuring out the world and then what's the best way to get people to see it.
Yeah. And I think that segues into what I really wanted us to spend some time talking about is, you know, we've got some new challenges ahead of us. And I mean, there's been this ongoing challenge, but it's definitely highlighted now, and it's what we need to continue to talk about and figure out solutions together. And that's more diversity in our industry. You know, people have been posting about how, you know, how many Black people are out there that are actually on camera crews right now. And it's ridiculous. It's like not even 0.5%, you know, and we need to find ways to help these people, you know, however it is, and get these people on these sets and having more diverse teams working on these shows. And so that's one of the things. What do you do as a producer to make sure that you have diversity on your team?
Absolutely.
And your crew?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, and you know, and it's tricky, as you said in the intro, it's tricky just being alive right now. Like I feel like every email I write even is just, you know, like, hope you and yours are well during these crazy but important days. And I do genuinely feel that. I feel like everything that's happening is, including the COVID of it all, you know, and the basically the revolution that we're poised to, you know, to have happen right now, that we're, you know, so many of us are actively really doing everything that we can to this shit's long overdue. Like it's not even a good enough word for it. And so, you know, being from Louisville, specifically Louisville, as we say, but like, you know, Breonna's Law, great, just happened, but like it's a drop in a bucket of things that need to happen, and it's terrific, and I'm so happy. And you know, I can go off on a Rand Paul rant, but I won't. I'll spare everybody that. But so it's, you know, in the film world, film and TV world, it's I take and use my privilege in the position that I am, that I found myself in recently over the last few years. You just really have to be open to it's just, you just have to be aware of when you're just sort of going through the motions, and how doing that allows you to go down a road that is not serving everyone. It's not serving, you know, if you're not paying attention and you're not actively trying to, it's like, you know, again, anyone with their eyes open reads recently, like, you just have to know that we live in a racist world. You know, like everybody just openly say it. I'll say it. I'm racist. I don't actively choose to be racist. You are. Every white person, every white person is, because the system is, and it's been going on for so long, for these 400 years. You know, we're all integrated into that. It's like the old joke, right? It's like two fish in the water, and one looks at the other and says, like, "Oh, is this water cold today?" And the second fish says, "What's water?" You know, we're in it. And so it's knowing how to be actively anti-racist, doing the work, doing the research, and being there, and knowing that, like, if you're just going through the motions, and you're just going to be like, I'm going to get recommendations from friends or see who all else has worked in the area and do it, so on and so forth, all the normal going through the motions things, unlearning the easy way to do things and actively going out and like checking out like who else you can find. Like, are there any, there's certain positions, like even, women, how many, try and find like, woman cinematographers or some of the great, like Greta you guys had on, and obviously Rachel, and there's so many terrific ones out there. My friend Dowmer, and just like Bradford Young is one of the most incredible cinematographers. I think he's directing now, or should be if he's not. But like, and even in these other departments, though, it's not just department heads. It's like, get, BIPOC, art department, BIPOC, like just find the options. And and then it's like, then there's the active other role where it's like, put everybody out there, find as much of a diverse slate of candidates as you can, and then actively sort of like see who has the experience. And it's not a matter of like overcorrecting. It's a matter of just like, if it comes down to 2 people, 3 people that all have actively like the same sort of resumes that are great, that vibe with the director or that vibe with the other department heads, whatever it is, then, just know that it's your job to take that privilege to tip the scales in the right direction. And that's how I feel. And, like, that's how I'm doing my part. And I'm learning and I'm doing the best that I can as we go. But I actively know, and I think this is part of this is part of being, someone who's won the privilege lottery. It's like, like all of the different privileges that I have, it's taking that and using it for the good of society to unlearn all of these terrible things that have just sort of been understood that are built into our systems.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's, as this time is a time for us to reflect and look in the mirror and say, what can we do better? What can I do better? And that's definitely, that's what we need to do. And we need to continue to share that message with everybody is, look inward and say, what can I do better? How can I help? And it's going to be different for everybody, of course, different roles, different positions, different places we live, but we have to, all of us, step up and as a team work towards this and fix this. Yeah,
exactly.
And then COVID, this is a whole nother challenge for us.
Also,
like you pointed out, how are you going to have
also, we have
5 people around the camera? Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it's so funny. It can get kind of exhaustive over the last few weeks. And I'm sorry, I just heard my headphones did the boo 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 boo. So like if I end up whatever, I'm gonna have to deal with that in a second. But so COVID, it got a little exhaustive reading all the different, like, here's what Film Florida says. Here's what the people in Europe say. Here's what the unfortunately named white paper that goes to the governors says. And I feel like I have 30 different documents that are, the end all be all for somebody of what they think needs to happen when we open back up again. And really, you can't get overwhelmed by it, because the reality is it's going to happen. It's going to happen slower than anybody wants, but it's going to happen the right way. And a lot of the things that get repeated are things that we just all have to assume. Insurance is going to be higher. It's going to cost more money. We're going to have shorter actual shooting days, because we're going to have to do things on the front and back end to like make sure everybody stays safe. The crews are going to be smaller. They might stay similar size, but like they'll be smaller in one place, and there'll be people offsite doing the cleaning and the various things or whatever. But like, we're all just going to have to rethink these things. And I think that the tumults and all of the annoying things and, economic collapse, there's really not a lot of better ways to say it, but everything that we're going through right now, and I'm not going to get too woo-woo on you, but I think that all of the things that we're going through right now are, including with COVID, I think are going to lead to good overdue change in our industry. And I think it's going to lead to much more. And again, this is the way I came up, and so it's never been a thing for me. But then you go back and you look at, like, oh my God, think of the Sarah Jones. I don't know. I can't. The safety has not been priority, and safety should be the priority for 100% of our industry. And it has not been the case with too many people bouncing around. And I think that it's going to get us even closer to being able to hit that mark. And I think people are going to have to, people are going to be forced to have safety and health of the people working on these projects as a paramount, just as a priority in a way that it always should have been. But I think it's going to force that into, I think our shooting days are going to get shorter, which has always been something, has been, as long as I've been working, has been something that has been outrageously out of control with the culture of our industry, the hour of the shooting days, and just the well-being of the people involved, you know, knowing that this isn't just a bottom line, this isn't cranking out a product. It's a collaborative, beautiful storytelling apparatus that has gotten a little bit off the mark, in my opinion. And I think, you know, a lot of things going on are really annoying, and a lot of people are, you know, losing their lives in this pandemic, and it's awful, and it's absolutely awful in a way that has nothing to do with, like, and honestly, I shouldn't even be talking about it. It's so self-centered. I feel like our silly industry feels so secondary to anything of the really big important things going on in the world so frequently. But we do serve an important purpose. Whenever I get into that, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? What are we doing? But the storytelling, like, how many people have gotten through this pandemic by crushing and streaming TV shows, watching classic movies they haven't seen before. And so we are serving a grand purpose. And I think we've gotten a little too close in the industry culturally into taking this as sort of like a commodity, especially with like peak TV and the content, just the lately the sort of like insatiable thirst for content that people have with all the different outlets and the internet and streaming and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's become too much of it, just like more. It's like, all right, maybe we all take a breath, and maybe we treat this with the careful, reserved reverence and respect that it deserves, you know. And and whatever, it's a little bit of a rant, but I think a lot of good's going to come out from what we're all fighting through right now,
right,
on all fronts.
What are you going to need as a producer in order to, you know, be able to go into battle on the next production? Because I mean, hearing everything that you said, it sounds like you're going to need more money, you're going to need more time, you know. And is that something that studios or networks are going to be willing to give you to, you know, continue producing the amount of content we've been producing, or is something going to suffer?
I think there's a little bit of a middle ground. There's a gray area answer to that, right? I mean, there is no answer to that. Like, who knows? Like, you know, we're still in a world right now where who knows what's going to happen. I think that the content thirst is not going to go away. And so I think that your Netflixes and Amazons are going to know what they need to provide. And I think that they will be able to do that. And I think the indie community, as it always has, you know, the non-studio projects are going to find their way. And I think what I need and what I think the industry needs to be, just to put it into a word, you know, without going down the rabbit hole of like, well, sure, it'll be more money and more time and more all of those things. And like, those things can all happen, you know. Like, there's some theory I've quoted that I'd have to look up, that it's like, you know, the amount of work always fits the amount of available time and money, right? Like, somehow or another, it all gets done. You know, I obnoxiously, in the middle of just about every project, somebody will hear me say, like my friend Alex Peace has heard me say 1,000 times, like, it's going to be fine. And you know how I know that is because it always is. It always ends up being fun. Like, you know, you think there's not enough budget, you think there's not enough time, and somehow miraculously, if you have people who are good at what they do, they'll figure it out. So to put in a word, what I think I need as a producer and as a content creator, you know, anything that I am on any project, what do I need and what does everybody need is flexibility. That's what I think. And I think that's how we're going to get through all of this.
Right. And you were in the middle of starting up a project prior to the shutdown. It was a project that was going to go last year, and then it was starting back up, and then
It's the movie that will just never die. It will happen. We're gonna make that movie. Yeah, it's called The Hating Game. It's based on a very popular book. Lucy Hale and Robbie Amell. Peter Hutchings, who's become a friend, is gonna be the director. You know, we were gonna shoot it partially upstate and down in the city. We got, tale as old as time, unfortunately. It was the first time it had really happened to me. But, we got up, we were a few weeks away from shooting. I think we were a week away from our tech scout, and it turns out our financier, who was very excited about everything, just mysteriously was not around anymore, and nobody could track him down. Turns out, allegedly, whatever, I'm not going to spill too much, whatever, but like, money went away. The money was not there anymore, and I had to have, the worst day in my career where I had to tell a bunch of people they didn't have a job for the next however many months, like we thought they were going to. But that said, that was out of anyone's control. That's still involved in the project, and it does happen from time to time. But then, yeah, we all got back together. A lot of the creatives, a lot of the folks involved got back together right before this all happened. A lot of things were just poised to go right in like the beginning of March into February. And then slowly we started hearing about what was going on overseas, and we started hearing about this, the coronavirus and all of these different things. And yeah, we were set to go. New financier that I met and is wonderful, and we jived, and everything was going to happen. It's like, are banks going to be involved, or are we going to just like figure this out on our own? Like, all the right conversations were happening, and then the world shut down, basically. So like, someday, third time's a charm is what I've been saying. So I think whenever we can go, and it's such a good group of people, and that's another one. I'm actually in the Hudson Valley right now. It's another one that would have a tie to the Hudson Valley, which I've really taken a shine to and love. We've got a place up here, and I think that's the Hudson Valley film industry is going to experience a little bit of a boom from this. I think because it'll be so hard, as you were saying earlier, it's so hard to shoot in the city. Places like Buffalo are going to get a lot of action. I have a good friend, my friend Gary, was going to work on a movie in Buffalo that ended up going away. But Rochester, Syracuse, like all the places with that extra push of tax incentive, I think are going to really start doing well in light of all of this once things get back up and running. But yeah, hating game. I'm telling you, and it's so right in my little rom-com wheelhouse. It's so great. It'll be so much fun.
I'm sorry to keep pushing this. I'm really interested, not only personally, but also from a business perspective. I mean, you've put a budget together pre-COVID, and I'm imagining you're working on a budget post-COVID, and I'm curious, what's that delta?
Well,
what are we talking about?
I think there doesn't necessarily have to be a delta, because with that, the team involved is so malleable on a number of fronts, and the number has been so agreed upon for such a long time that it's a matter of working within the box that exists. And I think that we can do that. And honestly, look, to be perfectly honest, no, I'm not working on the budget, because like nobody has any money, and like I've already done that budget twice, and I'm just kind of like, all right, you guys tell me when there's money in the bank, and we'll dive into this thing again. And which, everybody gets. And I think that time may be coming soon. And the reality is, like, with something like that, we had to plan, because look, not for nothing, you have to have your safety and health officer on, qualified person, like, that can be there single-handedly to be your COVID person day to day. Include, as well as, of course, your set medic and, multiple set medics potentially. I mean, that movie probably wouldn't be as much of a build. So, but anyway, set medic every day, plus your health and safety, COVID specific person. Again, redoing the schedule so that it's shorter days to allow for all the different pieces of like taking temperatures and checking different health elements and cleaning and all the extra things that would go in. But then additionally, just like the insurance premiums are going to go up. And, my insurance guy that I work with on these projects, like, he doesn't have these answers yet. They don't really know. It's like, are they going to cover COVID? If they do cover COVID, will they get an astronomical premium? Are all the premiums going to go up? And all this, not even to mention the fact that, sleepily in the midst of all of this, the entire New York State tax incentive went down by 5%. So then that's got to get adjusted. So, any number of things that need to be adjusted in that budget that, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to mess with until I know a little bit closer to time, like when it's going to matter. Like, I'm busying myself with plenty of other stuff. I watched all of The Leftovers, whatever, writing my own stuff. But no, in all seriousness, like when the time comes, that's absolutely stuff I'll have to consider. And those are all the bullet points. It's just like, it's going to cost more. You're going to have a PPE line. All of the different things.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this conversation will continue offline as we get
I'm
into...
just like, I just listened to a podcast yesterday that was like, I was like, oh, it sounds like these people have the answers. Like, nobody has the answers right now. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We're all flying by the seat of our pants, but we're all in the same industry, and we've dealt with this in different versions so many times. Like, we're problem solvers. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to put people in safety first, and we're going to get back to making movies. It just might not look exactly like it did before.
Yeah. No, it's funny. When I was talking to Zach earlier this week, and we were talking about how our industry adapts so quickly, like, you know, just like no other industry really in the world, how quickly we have to adapt, because we're out there day to day, and you guys think you're shooting a beautiful scene with a picnic in full sunlight, and then all of a sudden a storm rolls through, and it's like, you got to, right then and there, you have to figure out how you're going to keep shooting, and you're going to deal with it, and the continuity of it all. So exactly, we will adapt and we will push on. But exactly. I can only imagine the challenges you have ahead of you, and
right.
it's interesting to hear everybody's perspective on it. So,
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I kick myself every now and then for not getting into like animation. But you know, hey.
Are you still drawing comic books?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe just start dusting off the old drafting table.
I'd like to take the last couple of minutes here and look at some of the questions that came through. So one of them, a lot of them are actually COVID and wondering, you know, what you're going to need. And we've talked about that a bit. So you talked about dream projects, and you talked about, you know, potentially doing a Western. And so obviously people are wondering, well, you know, will you, if you're writing and directing that, or if that's a project of yours, what kind of message would you put into that?
Oof. Oh, man, that's interesting, because I have a very specific answer for that, for this particular movie. And I'm trying to think if there's a way without, well, I mean, who cares? It's not going to spoil anything. I guess the best way to say it is that this movie, it couldn't be any more of a departure from, you know, the rom-com that I did. It's so funny. So many people that I sent the script to, I was like, buckle up. This is not a comedy. It's not it's basically, it's a reflection. It's a meditation. It's a reflection, sort of an analogous look about grief and loss. And I think that sort of in a very specific way, I take these characters and what I'm trying to do is, and who knows, poorly, we'll see how it turns out. But people seem to have liked it so far. I think it's something that we all need to think about right now. I think it's very pertinent to right now, because I think what we're all experiencing right now is loss. We're going through a very long, sort of drawn out loss, and a grieving period is to follow, and is kind of happening at the same time. Where, you know, in my story, it's very specifically a loss of a loved one, but like overall, we're all losing our previous way of life. We've all lost reality as we knew it, in some really intense ways. And I think that as a society, we're, in a very macro way, we're going through that loss and starting to grieve at the same time. And the grief is going to continue to go on. So, and I think that is not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but it's something that we're all going to experience, and that we can turn into a good thing. And we can turn into change, and we can sort of utilize for the good, and take our knowledge of it and make these coming days better, and make, like we were saying with, you know, all of the racial tension and all of this overdue nonsense that like we need to start fixing right now, and all of these health, you know, being too flip about the health of everyone in the entire world. Even like I could get into like a whole, you know, insurance problems within America specifically kind of stuff. But I think that this, what we're going through, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, all of these bad things that are happening, we can harness and turn into good by recognizing what's happening, and sort of knowing that we're all going through a loss of what we knew life to be, and just and taking that experience and moving on through the grieving process. That is you ever start talking and then you're just like, who is that? whatever. That's my 2 cents. That's my highfalutin soapbox on all that.
And if you had your choice of, would this be something you would direct personally?
Oh, the script that I wrote? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's, yeah. I think it has to be.
So if you had the pick of production designer, cinematographer, composer, I'd be curious to, this is one of the questions as well. So.
Oh, if I had my pick, all right, I can't speak too much to that because I actually have a lot of that already sort of picked out, and I don't want to blow anybody up, but I also don't want anyone to be watching this and be like, wait a second, we haven't even talked about it. So, dream scenario, like, I don't know, a bunch of people who aren't alive anymore, because of, whatever, like you think about Westerns and but this one's, it's a new spin on it. I keep saying Western, but then I've told a couple of people it's kind of like an Eastern Western. I don't think I've ever seen a Western that is shot, it's during, the late 19th century when all of that stuff was going on in the Wild West, but I'm focusing on this Catskills region. So that's sort of where the initial idea came from. And hopefully we're doing something new in that front. But yeah, as far as dream, DP, I don't know, does John Toll want to come do that? Rachel Morrison. Let's get Rachel over here and, whatever. No, I got my good friend Jordan and I think are gonna rock this one out. And then awesome. I have plenty of other designs about other positions, but I wouldn't want to blow anybody up or offend it or any of that sort of stuff.
All good. And for the young crowd out there, any advice you want to share with people starting to get into this industry? And I mean, obviously challenging time, but they're going to be starting with, not much experience in pre-COVID. They're going to be coming into where we are now. And so right. What would you share with them?
I mean, my go-to answer for these kind of things, for this question generally is and I had plenty of people say this to me early on too, and I actually find it, the more I go into the industry and the longer I'm in it, the more important I think it is. If you think that there's anything else in the world that you can do or would potentially want to do, if there's not a fire in you to where this is the only thing that you could ever imagine yourself doing, maybe go do something else or give it a shot. No, have it arm's length, and maybe you'll fall that deep into it, and maybe you'll be like, I have to be a storyteller, I have to do this is something that I cannot get out of my system. I love it, I tried it, it's great, the hours are terrible, the pay is terrible, and I don't care because I can't get enough of it. Because truth is, I had that bug, and I didn't even really know it until I kind of started doing it, but I've had that bug for a long time, and essentially I'm stuck. There's nothing I would want to do in the world. I mean, actually, that's not true. Sometimes there's certain days where I kind of wish that I didn't have this drive, that I wish I could just like go work at an assembly line like my dad did for 40 years at GE and just be like completely happy with life and like, get off at 5 o'clock and go play softball with my buddies or whatever. Like part of me wishes I had that because it would be easier, but there's nothing I would trade for the world because I get to tell stories for a living, and I get to have that high when a story that you've been a part of for years, sometimes you see that 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever in front of an audience that doesn't know you or anything about it or anybody involved from anything. And they just are completely going into a cold, and it's so much a part of your life. And then you see that end and you hear that applause, or you hear that laughter, and just like that drug, if you don't live for that or don't imagine yourself living for that, I don't know. Lawyers make good money, I think. Doctors. That would be sort of my advice. But I mean, I don't want to scare anybody off because I hated when people tried to say that to scare me off too. But yeah, that would be my my 2 cents, I suppose.
Well, I appreciate that. It's important to hear those things. And, this is definitely an industry where you've got to be passionate and motivated and get ready for long days.
For sure. Yeah. Not, hopefully not as long. This is what I'm talking about. Hopefully the sea change is finally coming. I lost one headphone, so I don't know if you can still hear me very well.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, and
but,
then whatever. Yeah. I see the question. I don't know the Zoom thing. I see the Q&A thing blowing up. I'm happy to answer any questions, whatever else.
We're getting towards the end of the hour, so let me see if we can get one more in and see what we have.
We've been talking for an hour already.
It's amazing, isn't it? And how about this? Would you? This is a good closing one. Mm-hmm. Would you find yourself moving away from producing in the future and just focus on writing and directing?
If you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have said a resounding, absolutely yes. That's what I want to be doing with my life. Recently, being able to get into sort of more the development side and being able to latch onto projects that I know, I've sort of opened myself up to a new world of producing where I know that here's what I'll say. That would never happen because and it's specifically in light of what we were talking about earlier. And let me see if I can formulate this thought into a coherent rant. I think that producing for someone in my position is even more important than writing and directing, because I can write and direct a movie about people that sorry, that's my ADT system. I think my wife just opened the door for the dogs. A person who has won the privilege lottery, like I said, like myself, I can go and I can write and direct stories about people that look like me, or I can write, I can take that privilege and tell those stories that I think are my stories to tell, or stories that are appropriate for me to tell that I'm passionate about, and I can do that all day long. But I think producing, I've learned over the last few years, is a more important potential outlet for me, because I can take my privilege and my position and my experience and all of the things that I've positioned myself in to be able to capitalize on, and I can help people that don't look like me, that don't have these privileges, and I can find them, I can help them, and I can not be the center of those stories, but I can use my privilege to help those stories get told, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think I don't know, again, you asked me a few years ago, I was a little bit younger and a little bit more of an idiot, and I become less of that every day, ideally. But I think producing is arguably more important these days for a person like me, because it's my job to take what I have been blindly given and not earned in any way, take what I've been given in life and use that to help other people's voices be heard.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's a great way to say goodbye for today. I can't believe the hour's gone, but
I know. Yeah, I genuinely, if you told me it was 15 minutes, I wouldn't have. Of course, I yammer on forever.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate it, man. Looking forward to catching up soon and hopefully working together again soon.
Yep. Same, man. Same. All right. Appreciate it. Take care. Stay safe.
And thank you to all of you that joined us today. Our episodes will be available on our website, airyrental.com, and you can also check out all of our unique and exciting products that we offer. And you can follow us on youtube.com/Airy Rental Group. Please join us next week when we sit down with director and cinematographer Reed Morano to talk about her exciting career and all the projects she's been working on. All right. And until then, everybody, cheers.